Don't tune out. I get that you're on vacation, I get that you want to cut loose, have some fun, but you really do need to keep an eye on what's going on around you. There's a saying in Mexico, ponte trucha. And while it doesn't really make any sense when it's translated into English, put on the trout, in Spanish it means to pay attention, to be aware. If you've got a drink, watch that drink. Speaking of drinking, don't overindulge. When you go to the ATM to withdraw money, have a look around. Don't wander around with AirPods in, or if you have to be listening to your podcast, your music, just have one of them in. Keep an eye out for the sounds of the city, for people walking behind you, for traffic. Don't just step into a bike lane without looking. Be on the lookout for bike lanes. Try to make eye contact with drivers before you step into the street. Make sure they see you. Make sure that they're going to stop. One of the more common crimes here in Guadalajara, one of the more common crimes in any city in the world, is phone theft. If you're from a small town or somewhere where that doesn't happen a lot, no shade to small towns, I'm from one, you might need a few reminders about how to keep your belongings safe. When I'm out walking in the city, I keep my phone zipped inside my purse, only taking it out briefly if I need to check Google Maps. If I must send someone a message, I prefer to send a voice note so I can keep an eye out on what's going on around me. You might think your phone is safe if there are no other pedestrians around, but a motorcyclist can come out of nowhere and snatch your phone right out of your hand before you even realize what's happening. This almost happened to a friend of mine when a moto drove up on the sidewalk to try and take her phone. If you're from a big city or travel a lot, perhaps this advice will seem obvious to you. But I know how easy it is to get caught up in vacation mode and forget about maintaining situational awareness. It's important anywhere you are in the world. Don't rely on free Wi-Fi. There is no worse feeling than needing to do something on your phone and scrambling to find free Wi-Fi and it just never seems to be working when you need it. In the past, here on my channel, I've recommended popping into a convenience store to purchase a SIM card once you get to Mexico. But I have come to realize that interaction can be really, really intimidating for someone who doesn't speak a whole lot of Spanish, even for an intermediate Spanish speaker after a long day of travel. Your brain is just fried and you just can't even string the words together, you know? So let's just forget about physical SIM cards. The sponsor of today's video, Airalo, is the world's first eSIM store. Once you download the Airalo app, you can purchase and install an affordable plan from more than 200 countries and regions, including Mexico. No awkward or confusing convenience store interaction required. I personally used Airalo to purchase eSIMs when I was traveling in Spain, Germany, and Ireland last year. I am a huge fan. I am not techie in the slightest, seriously, just ask Taylor, but I was able to download Airalo and get my eSIM installed, up and running in just a matter of minutes. The first step is downloading the Airalo app. Install it today so it's ready to go for your next trip, and you can use my code AWittman3 for $3 off your first eSIM. So depending on how long your trip is and how much data you think you're going to be using, you can choose the option that's right for you. You can actually do this part before your trip. You can do it at home where you know you have reliable Wi-Fi, so then you've got your data ready to go when you arrive to your destination. When you touch down in Mexico, go into your phone, turn on the eSIM, and instantly have data. Install Airalo today and use my code AWittman3, that's AWittman3, for $3 US off your first eSIM purchase. Don't dismiss the bus. Driving in Mexico is its own beast. If you're traveling solo, don't speak Spanish, or aren't a super competent driver, I don't recommend getting behind the wheel. Instead, consider taking the bus. Many travelers, especially those from the US, tend to overlook Mexico's bus system, but it's one of the safest ways to travel around Mexico. In Mexico, the first-class bus system is well-connected, comfortable, affordable, and safe. This video has everything you need to know about first-class bus travel in Mexico, from how to buy tickets to what to expect at the bus station and more. Don't eat at low traffic street vendors. I like to go places that people have personally recommended to me. Maybe that's a friend, maybe that's a taxi driver. Taxi drivers, bus drivers always have awesome recommendations for where to get street food. But if you can't get a personal recommendation and you're looking for tacos, you're looking for street food in Mexico, then I like to just check to see that the street food vendor, that their little puesto is busy. A line is a good sign. That almost even kind of rhymes. Other indicators that I like to check for are that hot food is hot and cold food is cold. If they're keeping things on ice, that's a good sign. Another good sign is that there's one of those big, like industrial sized bottles of hand sanitizer. Because if it's there for customers to use, then there's also a very good chance that the people working there at the food stand are also using it. On the note of hand hygiene, I like to see that there is one person at the stand that is taking money and other people or another person that is actually preparing the food. If there's only one person at the stand, like say it's one of those little fruit carts that you see all over Mexico, I want to see that they are chopping up the fruit and then using a glove to take your money. Seeing somebody handle money with bare hands and then touch your food it's a bad sign. When it comes to staying healthy while you're traveling in Mexico, use common sense. And that is advice that I have not always followed myself. Just last year, I had a very humbling experience at the beach here in Mexico when I purchased oysters from a vendor who had been out with his wares all day long. I bought some oysters right as the sun was setting, and you can just imagine the rest. Don't drink the tap water. In Mexico, the overwhelming majority of people drink filtered water. At our house, we drink from a big 5-gallon jug called a garrafón. If you're out at a restaurant and don't want to pay for bottled water, you can ask for un vaso del agua del garrafón. While I wouldn't drink the tap water in Guadalajara, I do brush my teeth with it. If you're traveling around Mexico though, you should know that not all tap water is equal. I learned this lesson the hard way when I was in Chiapas, a state with notorious water filtration issues. Don't expect people to speak English. One of the best ways to feel safe and comfortable in Mexico is to understand, or at least have some idea of what people are saying to you and around you. The more Spanish you know, the more likely you're going to be able to just totally avoid or get yourself out of weird, uncomfortable situations. I'll give you an example. A few years back, I think this was in 2018, 2019, Taylor and I had rented a car for a road trip around the Yucatan Peninsula. We were finishing up the trip. We were driving back to the airport in Cancun from Tulum. This was before Tulum had its own airport. This corridor that we were traveling along was, maybe still is, infamous for police stops. We were driving along, saw flashing lights behind us, pulled over, and the police wanted to give us a ticket saying that my friend in the back seat didn't have her seatbelt on. Now, I don't know if that is or isn't the law in Mexico. What I do know is that the police officer was speaking very, very quickly in Spanish. He opened up a rule book and slammed it really quickly before we had a chance to read the paragraph that he was pointing to. And it was very, very obvious that he and his partner were trying to overwhelm us with fast-spoken Spanish, with rapid Spanish, just to get us to pay the ticket fee and go on to the airport. But once it was obvious that we spoke Spanish, that we were able to go back and forth with them, ask some questions, ask for a clarification, It became pretty obvious to them pretty quickly that this traffic stop, that the money that they were trying to get from us, whatever, that it was going to be more work to them than it was worth. While in the meantime, lots of other cars with lots of other tourists were passing by. What started off with them wanting something like, I think 5,000 pesos, ended with us just going on our way without having paid anything at all. Quite a few of our Spanish lessons paid for themselves that day. If you're planning on traveling to Mexico soon, I'd love to hear where you're headed. Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to wear sunscreen. The Mexican sun is no joke. Even if you're one of those people who never burns, apply it. And then a couple of hours later, reapply it. Obviously, you need to slather on sunscreen when you're at the beach, but don't neglect it on cloudy days. We visited Guachimontones, a fascinating archaeological site just outside of Guadalajara, on an overcast day, but there was still plenty of sunburn potential. Don't get in a taxi without confirming the rate. This will really help you to avoid any uncomfortable situations where a taxi driver might think he can overcharge you. A lot of places in Mexico, here in Guadalajara for example, rideshare apps like Uber are available, and when they are, I really prefer to use those because I can confirm the license plate, I can confirm the name of the driver, I can confirm the make and model of the car all before getting in, and then I can share my ride with somebody else. I've just gotten in the habit here of texting Taylor the link to my Uber ride anytime I get into an Uber by myself. Don't wear flip-flops in the city. A lot of people who come to Mexico pack for Mexico like anywhere they go in the country is going to be a tropical destination. Even here in Guadalajara, I will see tourists tromping around the city in their flip-flops, and that makes me so nervous because the sidewalks here are they are not great. They are uneven, there are random holes, there's litter, sometimes broken glass. You just never know what you're gonna come across. And having a fall, I mean, I've been traveling with people who have tripped, misstepped, and taken a fall. You know, some people who have gotten hurt. My aunt broke her ankle. Something like that is really gonna ruin your trip. So save the flip-flops for the beach and have a good closed-toed shoe, something that's comfortable, something that's sturdy when you are walking around in a city in Mexico. Don't arrive at night. Over the years, especially when I was more of a budget backpacker back in the day, try saying that 5 times fast. I used to take flights at all kinds of weird hours to try and save a buck. But these days I will try to always arrive to, especially a new to me destination, somewhere that I haven't been before, I will make an effort to arrive during the daytime while it is still light outside. When you arrive at night, everything's just kind of creepier in the dark. If you need help, it can be harder to come by. Whether you arrive during the day or at night, have a plan for how you're going to get from the airport, the bus terminal, wherever you get into, have a plan for how you're going to get to your accommodation. Nothing screams tourist like aimlessly walking around the airport without your next move in mind. So don't make yourself a target. Have a plan. And a good way to formulate that plan is messaging your accommodation ahead of the time to ask, hey, what's the best way? What's the cheapest way? What's the safest way to get from the airport, to get from the bus terminal to my accommodation? Hotels, Airbnb hosts, even you can use Rome to Rio to figure out the best way to get from point A to point B. If you have any questions about traveling safely in Mexico, or if you'd like to share your own tips, your own advice for how to stay safe while traveling in Mexico, leave those in the comments below. I'm Alex from backpackingbrunette.com. Thanks for watching.